Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Review, and happy Thanksgiving. This is the Thanksgiving edition of Fantasy Sports Review. It's great for me to be back in the studio here. I'm Phil Hargis. It's great to see you guys all again. I've been out kind of on a hiatus here. Robbie, Clara, Ryan Murphy, they've all been sitting in for the past month or so, getting you guys all caught up on fantasy football and everything for the past month. So we do have a mystery guest here in the house tonight. We don't know who it's going to be. It could be Clara, it could be Robbie, it could be Ryan. It could be Steve, it could be Doug, it could be Dave, it could be any number of people. So let's go ahead and cut to camera 2 here and see who our mystery guest is here today in the studio for Thanksgiving. We have, who is it?
Yay!
Ryan Murphy! Ryan Murphy is the mystery guest tonight. Ryan, welcome back to the show.
Lucky you. Thank you very much, Phil.
Yeah, it's lucky me or lucky them?
Lucky
I haven't really
everybody,
figured it out
as far
yet
as
right
I'm
now.
concerned.
Everybody's lucky to have Ryan Murphy, a little piece of Ryan Murphy for
including me.
Thanksgiving.
I'm lucky to be Ryan Murphy. So
What are your big Thanksgiving plans, man? You ready for the weekend?
I am going to go see some family, some friends, and just have a merry old time.
Good old holiday cheer, right?
That's right, yeah.
Gobble, 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 man. That's what we're all about
Absolutely.
here, man. Great. Well, obviously, with Thanksgiving, we have a lot of football involved.
We do.
There's a lot of great games. I mean, that is one of the national pastimes is football
For sure.
and Thanksgiving.
And for once, the Detroit game actually looks to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, for once. Your
Yeah.
Detroit Lions, the team you've kind of adopted here
right.
since the Redskins have struggled for so long. You like
right.
these struggling teams.
Support the
You know,
underdog,
Lions
that's right.
are in the midst of a great game. We'll get to the matchups here just shortly here.
For sure.
You know, sometimes what we do at this time at this time of the show is we recap the previous week's games. We've done that before. You know, now it's time to kind of like go back and reflect on the whole season. Now we've kind of reached a weird point in the fantasy football season here, where trading deadlines have passed. There's only so much you can do with your rosters right now because a lot of the great free agents have been picked up by your teams and everything. So now it's time to like kind of step back, reflect back, see who was good and who wasn't. Who was overdrafted and who wasn't, at this point in the season, who's at the top of the rosters and who's not. And it's a great time of the year to do it because there's not much we can do here. So let's go back and reflect back on the season, see who some of the surprise players are. I mean, we always start off with the quarterbacks here. I mean, what have you seen at the top of the list of the quarterbacks here that kind of catches your eye? Who are some of the steadies and who are some of the Freddies that have kind of jumped on the scene?
Aaron Rodgers. It's
all about Aaron Rodgers.
That's right. The guy is a steel sex machine, and he turns me on. I'm going to be very honest.
He is. and from a fantasy football perspective, though, this is a guy you have to draft in the first or second round.
Absolutely.
And on this show, it's not something that we have typically advised our viewers to do, is go out and draft a guy like Aaron Rodgers in the first round. Obviously, if you go out and drafted Aaron Rodgers in the first round this year, you were totally rewarded with it. But how's the rest of your team looking, though? I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then other guys, and then Ryan, in fantasy football, the same guys you have to draft in the early rounds: Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees. They are the guys that you see at the top of this list. Matthew Stafford is one of that middle tier guys, along with Eli Manning and Tony Romo and Ben Roethlisberger, that people are drafting in those middle rounds. So yes, you do get that consistency with that position. However, you do have to spend a second, third, or fourth round draft pick, or in the case of a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Mike Vick, and Mike Vick, as you see there at number 11, is a perfect example of why you do not draft a guy like Michael Vick in the first round, because coming off a career like almost unprecedented year performance-wise like Michael Vick, and to get rewarded with like a multi-million-dollar, $100 million contract like he was rewarded with, it's just a tough act to follow.
For sure.
And that's why you can't draft a guy like Michael Vick in the first round and then have him end up 11th on the list. If you could guarantee that Vick would end up number 1 on the list, yeah, it might be worth it. Like you get Rodgers, again, we're going back and forth here. But the same reason you don't draft a quarterback early, you can draft a quarterback late. You can get a guy like Cam Newton or basically nobody else on this list.
He's definitely been.
But if you go further down the list, you can get a guy like Sanchez, Freeman, Flacco, Fitzpatrick, Cutler, all the way down. Those guys, you're going to get 175 to 180 points, less than 10 points more for the entire season, but for a substantially lower round. That's why we like to draft the quarterbacks later on in the drafts.
Absolutely.
And moving on to running backs, that's the reason why you draft these running backs, because then you can hit the home runs with these guys like LaShawn McCoy.
Yep.
And Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson, Foster. I mean, those are the guys, Matt Forte, that you can get at the earlier parts of the drafts when otherwise these guys are drafting quarterbacks.
For sure. Unfortunately, Adrian Peterson is going to be out now with injury, but.
And Fred Jackson, I mean, this is another guy. I mean, the Fred Jackson was the guy that's like kind of carried a lot of these fantasy teams to playoff contention. I mean, like to records like 10-1 right now. I mean, whatever, 11 seasons, 9-2s. I mean, 8-3 is great records because you draft a guy like Fred Jackson in the fifth, sixth, seventh round to get value like that. I mean, Fred Jackson is, but now he's done for the year. I mean,
Got a
you
lot of
you there.
season left. I mean, we're gonna have to see what kind of points that they can
They
turn
now
out with
say
your
he's done
backup.
for the year, though. I mean,
Fred Jackson.
is gone.
Right, Adrian Peterson, they're thinking might be able to come back though.
Oh, he should. Yeah, he probably should. But they're
Yeah.
they're so crappy anyway. I mean,
What's the point, right?
what's
Save
the
him for
point
next
in rushing
year.
him back? And that same
Yeah.
thing happened to him last year. He got kind of banged up. They
Yep.
sat him out in some of those Blizzard games that they had to play.
Yep.
I mean, why rush him back if you're kind of your whole season's flushed down the toilet?
sure.
How about some of your guys like Michael Bush and Marshawn Lynch? I mean, those guys kind of came out of nowhere and
Absolutely out of nowhere.
had pretty good seasons
Huge
for their
surprises.
teams on the
Those
West
are
Coast there.
just kind of luck of the draw. Things I don't think anybody could really predict the kind of points that they ended up turning out. But I mean, God bless you if you did, because they definitely helped your team
Well,
out.
Michael Bush, I mean, everybody's drafting Darren McFadden there, and
Yep.
Darren McFadden is obviously a huge injury risk. So hopefully if you drafted a guy like Darren McFadden, you backed up McFadden with a guy like Michael Bush.
Right.
So, I mean, so running back is a weird position in fantasy football, the way that the sport's evolved now and everything. Normally you had stud guys like Marshall Falks, Priest Holmes, like guys that would carry your team.
Right.
Now teams are turning to that running back by committee situation where it's just like, platooning. It becomes just a fantasy nightmare for guys. So, one of the strategies going forward is like, maybe just forgo the running back position and focus on the quarterback position because you get that proven consistency. I mean, it's something that requires a lot more thought and a lot more gambling as a fantasy football drafter, but it's worthy of consideration. I mean,
Turnover rate over the last few seasons has definitely been a lot higher than we're used to.
so let's move on to wide receivers here. What do you like out of the wide receiver position this year, man?
Obviously, Calvin Johnson came out of nowhere.
Megatron.
Yeah, Megatron for sure. Turning up the points that he's turned up, nobody could predict that. I don't think anybody doubted that he was a talented receiver, but to get as many touchdowns and as many points as he's turned out has really been unprecedented.
You just have to figure sooner or later the guy with that much talent,
Mm-hmm.
with that kind of quarterback throwing to him, is going to certainly turn things around and generate that type of productivity. Wes Welker, the great white wonder, man.
That's right. Thank God for Tom Brady. It's what I always saying his prayers every day because this guy's definitely been blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a hell of a player, and and he knows it, and he's a very humble player. I mean, how about the reemergence of Steve Smith, though? I mean, this has been a little bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got a good quarterback to throw to him, so I think that's definitely something that's turned out for him.
And who would have ever known?
Who would have ever known? I mean, given the guy obviously a Heisman, trophy winner and everything like that, but to turn out the way that he has, the points that he's turned out in his rookie season, it's just been amazing.
In the memorable game after memorable game, I mean,
Yep.
down to the wire. I mean, they lose, but
Absolutely.
he still puts up great fantasy numbers
Yep.
and just great games.
Who went for
every time.
nothing at the beginning of the season. I mean, nobody thought that he was going to turn out the way that he did.
Nobody was drafting that guy.
Yeah,
man.
exactly.
So if you happen to draft him, you got rewarded by that. I mean,
For sure.
a lot of guys are just picking him up off the waiver wire.
Yep.
And now they're in playoff contention, probably going to win their leagues.
Absolutely.
Jordy Nelson. I mean, Vincent Jackson. I mean, I have to eat my words on this guy. I mean, Vincent Jackson is not a guy that I really expected to be that great. I've never been that impressed with him. But you watch this guy play. I mean, he's just a dominant factor out there on the field. He towers over everybody in the secondary there. He's a big, huge target out there, and he's impressive.
He's the guy who's turned out for San Diego. I mean, he's the guy that they're relying on, I think, a lot right now, and obviously that's helped out the people who drafted him because he's the one who's turning up the points for the team.
Yeah, especially with now because Antonio Gates has obviously really struggled with his injury, something that I've long prophesized on the show is like that injury is going to be like basically a career ending or hampering injury for him with that plantar fasciitis torn. I don't even know how he's going out there and taking the field, but you watch Antonio Gates and you know that he's like lost a step for sure.
Absolutely.
And it's a shame. And you go back to the running backs and you can see that Ryan Matthews, Mike Tolbert, I mean, the running back by committee situation they have there, which is a fantasy nightmare for like owners, does work out pretty well for the Chargers in the grand scheme of things. You never know who's going to be with those guys, except for Vincent Jackson. He's a very solid guy, and it's kind of shameful that Phillip Rivers is he's really having a poor season.
Very poor season. I don't think anybody could have predicted that either. He's definitely gone the opposite direction. I don't think he's really turned out much for anybody who has him on their teams.
It's shocking. I mean, he's got the yardage and everything, but just makes so many stupid turnovers.
Yep.
I mean, throws so many interceptions that.
For any positive points that you're getting negative points to make up for it. So.
Dude, what are you doing, man?
Yep.
What the hell are you doing? Tight ends. I mean, it's a weird position, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, what do you think about the position this year? I mean, with some of these guys.
Gronkowski, obviously, he's amazing. He's a machine. The guy is a refrigerator running down the field. I mean, he's amazing.
Do you think it has to do with the fact that he's sleeping with porno stars?
Could be. I mean, that could be providing him some stress relief, just more of
Peak
a clear head.
performance.
Or it could be giving him a lot of stress, and so he's just running on something else. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, all those guys in New
Turned
England,
out.
man, they're hooked up pretty well, whether it be
For
with their porno star models or through
right.
Tom Brady and some of his luscious connections for sure.
That's the team I would say across the board has the most consistency.
Yeah, and here's the thing: is with the tight end position we talk about with fantasy all the time. I mean, you don't again with quarterbacks, you don't need to draft. You draft tight ends really late in the draft. You almost can pick them up off of waiver wires. And you look at this list, you get a guy like Jake Ballard, who nobody's ever even heard of before. You can get him off of waiver wires. You can get a guy like Gronkowski. He was getting drafted in probably the 8th, 9th, 10th rounds here. Jimmy Graham a little bit higher. Tony Gonzalez late in the draft. Witten Finley high. But you don't need to draft a guy like those guys that high. Fred Davis was undrafted in a lot of drafts, or very late in the drafts, just because, was it going to be Chris Cooley? I mean,
Exactly. There was nobody was sure about what was going to happen in that position. Obviously, Chris Cooley is gone for all intents and purposes. Fred Davis has had a chance to kind of shine a little bit. So.
And when you have unproven quarterbacks, there's a very strong comfort level they have in throwing to their tight end position.
Absolutely, short passes.
So let's go ahead and talk about right now, before we get into the matchups, if you have the ability to still pull off trades or waiver wire transactions, one of the things we talk about on the show with regards to solidifying your team, hopefully you're in position to win your fantasy playoffs, at least advance the playoffs, and once you get into the playoffs, you want to do the best things you can to exploit the matchups that are available to you. So you have to look at the weeks 14 in most cases, in some cases, and then especially in weeks 15 and 16. Those are your fantasy playoff weeks. So you want to look for like the ideal matchups there. And looking at weeks 15 and 16, we've done a little study here and kind of highlighted some of the teams that you can sort of eyeball and kind of pinpoint for trades that will have very good fantasy playoff matchups coming into weeks 15 and 16. And here's one of the maddening things about fantasy football is that, like, you see a team like Kansas City is like, okay, I'd really like to take advantage of that. Well, what are you going to do? You can go out there and pick up Tyler Palko to be your fantasy quarterbacks for weeks 15 and 16? I mean,
Right.
You're not going to do that.
Yep.
However, I mean, who's their wide receiver? Dwayne Bowe. And he's a stud. He's in the top 12 for receiving this year.
Yep.
I think people might be down on because they do have Tyler Palko throwing the ball now rather than Matt Castle. So this is the kind of guy you can target for a trade.
Absolutely. It's a little unpredictable at this point.
It's totally unpredictable, but these are the kinds of situations you can exploit. Miami, Denver, Dallas. I mean, the teams you see on this list going down a little bit further, Buffalo. These are teams that are typically going to be playing from behind, and when they're playing from behind, what are they doing? They're passing the ball.
Yep.
So you can take their quarterbacks, you can take their wide receivers, and they're going to be playing from behind. So they have the propensity to be able to pick up some pretty good fantasy points for your team. So these are the kinds of teams and the players on these teams you want to try to pinpoint for trades. Houston's an interesting thing. Andre Johnson's kind of, if you're in the playoff position here right now and you've kind of locked in, I mean, why not try to trade for a guy like Andre Johnson who's been out for the last 5 or 6 weeks? Teams are getting frustrated with that. If they need to win right now to get into the playoffs, Andre Johnson's doing them no good.
For sure. Totally agree.
So you can go for it there. I mean, obviously it's going to be tougher to get players like Matt Stafford and Megatron. I mean, nobody's going to trade those guys.
Nobody's going to trade them
this
late in the season. Not a chance.
They're solid. I mean, you're not going to get a Romo probably. You're not probably not going to be able to get Des Bryant or Jason Witten.
Only way they're not going to be on your starting is if they get hurt. So that's pretty much the only chance.
But Tebow would be a great choice.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, he's turned out. He's been a huge surprise. Though he's kind of shaky. I mean, some people might still be willing to trade him up, and he could give you some surprise numbers. He could also be a huge bust. So you never know.
Well, he keeps winning games, and people keep talking about how he's been a surprise performer. I think he's actually sucked.
As a quarterback, he has absolutely sucked. He's been 4-1 at the helm. He's been, winning games and everything like that. But when you look at his record, he's having 2-8 passing games. So it's not necessarily that he's going to be turning up any points for his passing yardage. Although when he's rushing for touchdowns and he's getting a lot of rush yardage, I mean, those are things also going to help you out.
They do. They definitely help you out in fantasy, and that's the only reason why he has any value in fantasy.
Absolutely.
At all. That's right. Because they keep winning games, which is the shocking thing. He's like, Orton was one of those guys that was crazy too. I mean, when he was in Chicago, maybe not as much in Denver, but he was a guy that would not put up impressive fantasy numbers, but he would put up wins for his team.
Right. Is that a guy that you would want to pick up now, Kyle Orton?
He just got signed. He just actually got claimed off of waivers by the Kansas City
Exactly.
Chiefs.
That's right.
So Tyler Palko's future is a little bit in doubt right now.
That's right.
I know the Bears would have loved to have had Kyle Orton back.
Oh, they would have absolutely loved to have had him back, but they lost him.
And I think it would have been good for the NFL. Could they have gotten Kyle Orton back on their team? Because, we'll get into we're actually going to get into a little time out right now. We're going to get into our playoff and our Super Bowl predictions next week on the show. So make sure you tune back in for those. We'll have Doug back on the show via Skype from his sunny destination down there in Alabama. We'll be happy to have him back on the show. We'll probably have Ryan, Robbie, Claire, whoever wants to come back on, and we're going to do all of our fantasy playoff Super Bowl predictions for next week's show. It'll be awesome. But we like to do that, like 4 or 5 weeks out. Other guys will wait and make all these predictions like 1 or 2 weeks left in the season, but we're going to do them now. We do them like a month and a half early.
Because we're different and we're better.
And we're way better. We have Doug nailed it last year. He had Green Bay and New England last year, but obviously New England lost in the first round, so nobody would have had that. And then after that, Pittsburgh was number 2 seed. So Doug was pretty close. Green Bay was a 6th seed, and they had to struggle with making the playoffs. So
that's right.
He nailed it, and hopefully we'll nail it again this year for you guys that are placing your futures proposition.
Do you think anybody won't be picking the Packers? Packers haven't lost a game since they played the Lions last year. So
I'll be picking against them.
Well, yeah?
I'll definitely be picking against them.
Tune in next week to find out who he will be picking.
And all that, but they're undefeated right now. I'm just going to go and give them my little teaser for next week's show. The Green Bay Packers will finish 13-3.
Whoa.
They're going to get staggering in the playoffs. On a losing streak, they're going to lose two in a row going into the playoffs.
Do you think that
they lose to
they're going to
Detroit
sit
this
Aaron
weekend?
Rodgers or something? What is your reasoning for that?
Well, they're going to lose their perfect record streak this weekend, and we'll get to we might as well move right into matchups. We have to go into the rush. We'll quickly go into the rushing matchups for the fantasy playoffs, but they'll lose on St. Patrick's Day. Right. They're going to lose on St. Patrick's Day for sure. Because they're not going to be playing. They're going to lose on Thanksgiving for sure.
Oh, which reminds me. Robbie, I'm sure that he's definitely paying attention to this show, and I believe that we had a bet last week. He believed that the Washington Redskins were going to defeat the Dallas Cowboys, which I unfortunately had to go against.
It was close.
And it was a very close game.
You had to sweat it out.
Yeah, it wasn't an unwise bet on Robbie's part, but he did lose that bet, therefore meaning, of course, that I won, and we'll have $10 coming to my name. So I just wanted to put that out there.
10 Monopoly dollars, of
Absolutely.
Because we don't advocate,
never. This is not
gambling on the
actual
show
gambling
at all.
For sure. He's going to get me a Barnes & Noble gift card.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
That can get you a couple magazines, and you'll be able to go learn more about
Fantasy Sports Review.
Fantasy
magazines.
Football Review. Exactly. Nice, baby. Fantasy play. So for your running backs, guys, you can try to pick up here. If you have Arian Foster, you drafted him. You took a chance on him in the preseason, which we definitely told you not to do. But he's been great.
Yep.
Surprisingly good by my estimations. He's been a stud. If he would have played all of his games, he would have probably been the number 1 guy right now.
Yes, I agree.
But instead, Ray Rice is hanging on for number 2, and I predicted him he'd be the number 1 guy at the end of the season. So I'm holding out hope for that one. Cincinnati, Tennessee, maybe Tennessee. I've been saying all season long the Chris Johnson has had favorable rushing matchups.
Yes.
He just hasn't been able to do anything with them.
A talented guy, once again. He's been the most traded player in the league, and the reason for that is because I think a lot of people are trying to trade by buy low standard, thinking that he's going to have one of his breakout games, which he has had a couple of them during the season, everything like that.
A couple.
And some people have been rewarded for them. However, he's also, I think, had the absolute most rejected trades too, because people are really scared to take him on because he's completely unpredictable.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost impossible. I mean, that is a team that is on the cusp of being out of the playoff hunt.
Absolutely.
They're still in it though.
They are.
And
A lot of season left.
We'll get into our predictions again next week, and we'll see how their matchups look. But they do have some decent looking matchups. It's going to be tough for them, especially given the content of the rest of their team.
Correct.
Losing Kenny Britt.
Yeah, consistency is not something that they have. They have a lot of dependency on people who aren't very consistent. So
If they can get Chris Johnson moving, though, I mean, who knows? A team I really like a lot, and I can't believe I'm saying this, is Oakland.
Washington Redskins.
I think the Redskins are going to make a run here. They're going to go 6-0 to run the season and make the playoffs.
Absolutely.
You heard it here first.
That's right.
No, I'm not Sonny
That's right.
Jurgensen, man. I'm just kidding, man. The Redskins are not going to do that. You don't want any Redskin fantasy players on your team right now, except for maybe Fred Jackson.
Right.
Fred Davis.
Fred Davis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My favorite team, I'm already forgetting all their players' names. That's how forgettable their season has been.
Nice. Oakland Raiders, though, huge surprise. Absolutely, totally agree. Carson Palmer has done well the last 2 games. His first 2 games with the team were pretty horrible, but of course that was a new offense that he was working with.
Throwing the Wolves and
exactly, yeah, tons of turnovers and everything. But his last 2 games have been pretty good, so he might be a good player to have.
Yeah, and despite the fact that they're killed with injuries too, I mean.
Absolutely.
You know, that seems to be the theme of the season. Every time we bring up a team or a player or something, I mean, it seems we're talking about injuries. I mean, that's what happened. Okay, so those are the running back guys you want to pick up. We'll post these on our Facebook and our fantasyreview.com, so you can go look at them in greater detail for some potential matchups in weeks 15 and 16 you can exploit. But let's get on to matchups for this weekend. I mean, it's Thanksgiving Day weekend. Obviously, the NFL has done us a very good favor by giving us three football games to look at on Thanksgiving. And where's our schedule? Here it is. I know we have it here somewhere. TNF, baby.
Yep.
Starting off,
we have
number one
high-tech
game.
television machines in our desk here, not papers.
Here we go, man. Of course, it'll be over with by the time this show airs. But
for sure,
let's give our prediction because this is Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving. We're taping this right now, 9:32 and 28 seconds. Green Bay and Detroit, man. What's going to happen?
Green Bay and Detroit. I am going with Green Bay. All right, you've already kind of announced your decision there, but as strong as Detroit is, and as much as I'm rooting for them, I would love to see Green Bay go undefeated, and I can't imagine Green Bay having a chance to actually defeat them.
Yeah, their defense sucks.
Defense for the Packers?
Yeah.
Absolutely does suck. It's one of the worst in franchise history.
So.
And as the Detroit proved last week against the Panthers, they can really turn up a lot of points in a hurry, even when they get down. They were down 24-3 against the Panthers, and they came back and ended up winning the game. It was 49-35, I believe, or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's a team that can turn up a ton of points in no time against a defense that isn't prepared for them, and that could be the Packers.
It could be the game of the week. It'll definitely be the game of the day.
I'll be watching, absolutely.
You tune into Miami and Dallas. I mean, that kind of has a blowout written all over it. But I mean, Miami has won 3 games in a row.
They absolutely have. Could be a big surprise there.
I doubt. I don't know if it was snowing in Dallas. I mean, we had the Leon Lett thing a couple of years ago, where he goes running down there and slides across the snow and fumbles the ball, and the rest was history.
Here's hoping.
Yeah, here's hoping. It's always great to see Dallas lose on Thanksgiving, but I don't see it happening this week.
Probably not.
Then you move on to the night game, and then surprisingly, the battle of the Harbaugh brothers.
Amazing, yeah. This is going to be a huge game.
It's a huge game.
Yep. Nobody would have predicted the 49ers being where they are right now, but they are there, and it's a team that can astonishingly beat one of the best defenses in the league with the Ravens.
I think Baltimore is going to get it done here, though. I mean, I can't see that. I still can't. This is going to be a really good first, official. I mean, San Francisco's beaten some good teams, yes. But Baltimore is the real deal. I mean, I think Baltimore is a legit Super Bowl contender here.
Absolutely, and they're undefeated at home. This is a team that you just don't beat at home, but San Francisco could have it done. Who do you think is going to win?
I'm definitely going with Baltimore on this one.
Going with Baltimore.
It's not even, I think it'll be close because I don't think Baltimore blows anybody out except for Pittsburgh in Week 1. But I just can't see San Fran coming across the country and winning this game.
I understand that. Me personally,
tell me I'm wrong.
As unpredictable as Baltimore has been, I'm going to have to go with San Francisco.
Going with San Francisco.
Yeah.
Man, I would love to do a $10 Monopoly bet on this one, man.
All right, we can do that.
We can do that.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
good. It's on. It's totally on for sure.
Yeah.
That's gonna be. I think that's gonna be those. We got them both on Thanksgiving Day, man. From the time you start eating turkey until the time you're ready to pass out on the recliner, man. You're ready to go.
Absolutely.
Houston, Jacksonville. Again, some weird stuff's going on with Houston and their injury situation there. Schaub. Matt Leinart makes his debut of the season.
Correct.
It's going to be pretty ugly, probably.
Yeah, it's going to be a crazy game. I can't imagine Jacksonville actually beating Houston. But if they're going to do it, I mean, this is the time to do it. I still have to pick Houston, though.
Yeah, I think Houston's still got a pretty. Luckily, they've built themselves up. I mean, they're the number 1 seed if the playoffs started today, and I think that they can kind of just coast into the playoffs there and still make it. I mean, the only team they have to watch out for is Tennessee, but they have a pretty good buffer there, so they should be okay.
Sure. Yep.
Let's move on to Carolina, Indianapolis. I mean, this is the dreaded game of the day. I mean, from a fantasy perspective, I mean, you don't even really want to start anybody there except for maybe Cam Newton.
Yeah.
That's about the only one.
I would definitely start Cam Newton, absolutely.
Is Indianapolis going to get their first win this season this week?
No, they won't, Phil. Indianapolis is going to get crushed by Cam
At
Newton.
home?
Yeah, I would definitely say that they will. Unfortunately, this isn't a team that I would vote on any week of this season.
Okay, well, if the Redskins played Indianapolis tomorrow, would they
That
win
is
or lose?
one chance because Indianapolis, I've heard a lot of people say if Indianapolis came into Redskins territory that they would still win, which is just a horrible thing to hear come out of my mouth. But I'd still pick the Redskins in that game. For sure.
I think the Colts would do it, man.
Well,
I've
be surprised,
I've seen it happen too many times.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next game. Minnesota and Atlanta. And this is a game Atlanta's kind of got to have. I can't see them losing this
No,
game.
Atlanta will most definitely have them, especially with their Minnesota's top running back out of the game. I mean, they really don't stand a
Peterson,
chance.
he's not going to play. So
For sure.
If he's definitely not going to play, then they definitely have no chance in that one at all, despite the fact that my Florida State boy, Christian Ponder, will be quarterbacking that team. Let's move on to Tampa Bay and Tennessee. Those two teams are teams that will kind of be fighting for their playoff lives here. I mean, this is kind of a must-win situation for them at this point in the season.
Absolutely.
Here.
It could be a really good game to watch.
I've never liked Tampa Bay. I haven't liked them this entire season. I don't really like Tennessee either, but something's got to give here. I'm going to go with Tennessee.
I'm going to go with Tennessee as well.
All right, man. We're agreeing on a lot of these games here, man. I like these non-combative things. Let's fight about this one here, Arizona and St. Louis.
That's right. You're wrong.
I am. I'm going with Arizona because I think Andre Roberts is going to have his breakout game and score his first touchdown of the year.
I agree, actually. I'm going to go with Arizona, too. I think that they have what it takes to beat St. Louis, which isn't a whole lot.
I mean, regardless of quarterbacks, I mean,
That's right.
who's it going to be? I mean, is it going to be Skeleton again? I mean, he came out and threw 3 interceptions last week. That was kind of bad for him. They brought in their backup quarterback. I don't even remember who that was. But I think Skeleton does
really
get
matter.
the start again.
Yeah, Skeleton will definitely start again.
And there's just too much firepower there, I think, to think that they would lose to St. Louis.
If it was any other team, maybe.
St. Louis might be the worst team in the league besides the Redskins.
Besides the Redskins in Indianapolis.
I think actually St. Louis is probably worse than the Redskins are worse than St. Louis. The Redskins are probably the worst team in the league. They are. All right, man. Chicago and Oakland. This is a great game here. The new Chicago quarterback, Caleb Haney, gets the start here. Can you get it done against Oakland, a little feisty Oakland team?
Yeah, I really don't think that they can. Cutler really seems to have given that team an identity, and it seems that they probably will lose it this week. I mean, Matt Forte, they still have him. It's really interesting to see what the team's going to be able to turn out now without Cutler behind the helm. I think it might really hurt Forte's point chances here, but at the same time, they're going against, like you said, feisty Oakland team.
I think Cutler Tilley sucks, and I think that the team can win or lose regardless who's at quarterback. I really do. I think they're so well coached.
I'm not a huge Cutler fan. Don't get me wrong.
They got great chemistry, so I actually think that Chicago is going to continue to win. I think they're going to still be one of the top seeds going into the playoffs coming up. Let's move further down the list here. We don't care about what's going to happen with Washington and Seattle. We know Washington's going to lose that game. Denver, San Diego. I mean, that's an interesting game here. I think San Diego is the most overrated team almost in the history of the NFL. So I think Denver wins that game
for sure.
New England, Philadelphia. Philadelphia's is lost control of themselves here. So let's move straight to Monday Night Football. The Giants and the Saints. I mean, you're going to start all your fantasy players on this. This is a fantasy dream come true. Absolutely. Who's going to win this big game on Monday Night Football after this weekend feast of football? I'm
going to have to go with New Orleans, man. They're looking good.
They're looking good, and I still don't know if the Giants. I mean, they're too inconsistent right now.
Yeah, a little shaky.
And I think that Drew Brees will blow up and throw throw a couple touchdown passes to Marquez Colston and Jimmy Graham, and it should be an easy victory for them.
I agree.
Great, man. All right, Ryan Murphy, happy Thanksgiving. Great having you back on the show.
Absolutely, it's my
pleasure. Good to see you again, man. We'll go carry on this holiday cheer here with some wild turkey here shortly. Steve Mullen, thank you very much for directing the show. Nikki Grant, thank you for being our one studio member there in the audience to show us very strong crowd support.
Absolutely.
But hey, here at Fantasy Sports Review, hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next week for our fantasy football playoff predictions. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.